Hi there, Mr. Sutton here, bringing you the Algebra 2 Honors 2-3 Part 1 homework solutions on writing equations of parabolas in focused directrix form. For this problem, they've given me the graph of a parabola and they want me to write the equation. So let me just write out a couple things that are on the graph that I just want to refer back to. The vertex, it looks like, is 0, 0, so that'll be helpful to know. And they spelled out the focus for us, 0, 1. So we'll also be using that. Now I need to pick the type of equation that I'm using, the type of formula. I'm going to go with the y equals 1 over 4p x minus h squared plus k formula. And I'm choosing this because this is an up-down parabola, so those always have a y equals sort of equation. I've already got the h and the k value. That's just the 0 and the 0 from the vertex. I just need the p-value. I can figure out the p-value, which is just the distance from the vertex to the focus, or the directrix, by just doing the focus minus the vertex. So 1 minus the 0, that's the y value for the vertex. And that gives me a p-value of 1. Plugging that back in, I have y equals 1 over 4 times 1. And since I'm plugging in 0 for h and k, all this x squared business just comes out to x squared. So simplifying that, that's just y equals 1/4 x squared. For this problem, we're given the directrix and focus of a parabola, and we're trying to figure out the equation for it. So let me start by figuring out the type of equation that I want. Since we've got y equals and the focus also has this y value that's not 0, I am suspecting that this is a y equals type of parabola. It's an up-down parabola. I mean, the directrix equation spells it out. Y equals here means we have a y equals general formula. So let me write that out. Y equals 1/4 or 1 over 4p and all the rest of that. That's the version we're using. Okay, so the vertex, we need to get that, the h and the k. So let me average together my directrix and my focus, because the vertex is halfway between those. So I've got -7 plus 7 over 2. And we have 0 for the x value of the vertex, because again, this is an up-down parabola, so the x is not changing. And -7 plus 7 over 2 is also just 0, so 0, 0 for this vertex. Now for the p-value, I'm just going to do the focus minus the vertex here, so -7 minus 0, which gives me a p-value of -7. Plugging that back in, we have 1 over 4 times -7 times, let's see, all this stuff with 0 plugged in for h and k. So that's just going to be an x squared when all the dust settles there. So this ends up being then y equals -1/28 x squared. On this problem, we are given the focus and directrix and want the equation of the parabola. So we need to get the vertex at some point. But before we do even that, let's figure out if this is an x equals or y equals type of parabola. Since my directrix equation has x equals in it, that tells me I need x equals for my general formula. So that's going to be x equals 1 over 4p and then y minus k squared plus h. Now let me get that vertex. The vertex is going to be halfway between the focus and the directrix. The y value of the vertex is just going to be 0. Since this is a left-right parabola, the y values are staying the same, but the x value is going to be halfway between 2/3 and -2/3. So if I just average those together, that actually gives me just 0 over 2. So 0, 0 is our vertex. Now for the p-value, that's just going to be my focus minus my vertex, so 2/3 minus 0, which gives me 2/3. Plugging that back into our formula, we have x equals 1 over 4 times 2/3. And the rest of it here, since I'm plugging in 0 and 0 for h and k, that's going to just be y squared over there. I can simplify this a little bit. This is really 1 over 4 times 2, so that's 1 over 8/3. Same change flip, that becomes 3/8. And then we have the y squared still there. So x equals 3/8 y squared. For this one, we have the vertex and the directrix, and we want the parabola equation. Is this a y equals or an x equals one, first off? Well, we have y equals for the directrix equation, so we're going to use y equals 1 over 4p and all the rest of it for our parabola equation. It matches the directrix. For the vertex, the h and the k, we've already got that. We have 0 and 0, so that's cool. For the p-value, I can get that by taking the vertex and subtracting the directrix, at least the y values there. So we have 0 minus negative 9, which is really just 0 plus 9, or 9. Plugging that back in, we have y equals 1 over 4 times 9. And then since I'm plugging in 0 for h and k from the vertex, that's just going to be x squared right there. So we end up with y equals 1 over 36x squared. On this problem, we have the vertex and the focus. We want the equation. So is this x or y equals? Well, the only values changing from the vertex and the focus are the y values. So that tells me this is an up-down parabola, which means we need the y equals for the equation. So y equals 1 over 4p x minus h squared plus k. For the h and the k, we've already got the vertex 0, 0, so we can move on to find the p-value. P-value is just going to be the focus minus the vertex, so negative 10 minus 0, which gives us negative 10. Plugging that back in, we have y equals 1 over 4 times negative 10. And then, again, the h and the k are 0, so this is just going to be x squared if we simplify all that. And then this all simplifies to y equals negative 1 over 40 x squared. For this problem, they've given us a graph of a parabola, and they want the equation. So let me write down the important pieces that they've given me here. The vertex, it looks like, is going to be negative 6, comma, I believe this is negative 4. These are all going by 2's, these grid lines. So negative 6, negative 4. And then the focus down here is going to be negative 6, comma, negative 10. Now, which type of equation am I using, x equals or y equals? Since I can clearly see this is an up-down parabola, I'm going to go with y equals 1 over 4p x minus h squared plus k. For the h and the k, the vertex, we've actually already got that. That's right here, negative 6 and negative 4. So we'll plug that in a little bit later. We still need to find this p-value, though. I can find that by taking the focus and subtracting the vertex, the y values at least, since this is an up-down parabola. So we've got negative 10 minus negative 4. That's negative 10 plus 4, which is negative 6. All right, so plugging all that in, we have y equals 1 over 4 times negative 6. And then we have x minus the x value from the vertex of negative 6, so x plus 6 squared then is what I end up writing. And then the k is this negative 4 from the vertex, so that's minus 4. And then just simplifying this a term out here, we have y equals negative 1 over 24, and the rest of this stuff. And that's it. For this one, we have the directrix and the vertex of a parabola. We want to write the equation. So first things first, let's figure out if this is an x equals or a y equals. Since my directrix equation is x equals a number, that tells me that this is going to be a left-right sort of parabola. So I'm going to write x equals 1 over 4p y minus k squared plus h. Now I need the vertex for this thing to work, and it looks like they've already given it to me, so I can move on from there. I need the p-value as well. I can get that by taking the vertex and subtracting the directrix. But which values am I using from the vertex? Well, since this is x equals 4, I need to use the x value of the vertex. So I'm going to go with negative 7 minus 4 to get that p-value. And that's going to give me negative 11. Plugging that back in now, we have x equals 1 over 4 times negative 11. And then I've got to be careful here. This is y minus the y value of the vertex. So this is actually going to be y plus 5 quantity squared. And then out here, this h is the x value of the vertex, so negative 7. Simplifying all that, we end up with x equals negative 1/44 y plus 5 squared minus 7.